The wind came hard off the desert that night, bending the creosote and filling the Nogales sky with dust. Inside the Silver Spur bar, the jukebox hummed with old country songs that no one was listening to. It was nearly midnight, and the regulars had drifted home. Only the bartender, Lena Cruz, remained, wiping down tables, half lost in the hum of the ceiling fan. Lena liked the quiet hours. They made her forget where she was, what she'd seen, what she owed. She'd come to Nogales to disappear, and for a while it had worked. Until the night a child knocked on her door. It started faintly, 3 sharp raps over the storm outside. Then again louder. Lena frowned, setting the rag down. Nobody came to the bar after closing. She hesitated, then crossed to the door and peered through the glass. A little girl stood in the rain. She couldn't have been more than 8. Barefoot, hair plastered to her face, clothes soaked through. Her eyes, wide, terrified, locked on Lena's. Lena opened the door without thinking. "Sweetheart, what?" The girl's lips trembled. "They beaten my grandmother," she whispered. "She is dying." The wind carried the words into the room, cold and final. Lena's breath caught. "Where?" The girl pointed toward the hills beyond the highway. "At our house. Please." Lena grabbed her coat. "Come on. We'll call the police on the way." The girl's head jerked. "No police." That hesitation, the sharp, frightened way she said it, made Lena's stomach drop. "Why not? They said if we tell anyone, they'll come back." Lena knelt down, lowering her voice. "Who said that, baby?" The girl's eyes filled with tears. "The men with the black trucks." Lena froze. There were only a few people in Nogales who drove those trucks. And only one man they answered to. Santiago Vega. The cartel lord who ruled the border like it was his personal kingdom. A man whose smile could charm a priest and whose wrath could silence a city. Lena had spent 2 years pretending she'd never heard his name. Pretending she hadn't once stood in his house. Hadn't once seen what he could do when he lost control. Now a child was standing in front of her, bleeding rainwater and fear, saying his men had beaten her grandmother. Lena swallowed hard. "What's your name?" The girl wiped her face with the back of her hand. "Marisol." "Okay, Marisol. You're safe now. Let's go help your grandmother." The drive into the hills was quiet except for the wind and the girl's uneven breathing. The headlights cut through the rain, flashing across the scrub and barbed wire. Marisol sat curled in the passenger seat, clutching a small red backpack. She hadn't said another word. When they reached the house, a small adobe shack half buried in the mud, Lena's heart sank. The front door hung off its hinges. The porch light flickered weakly. Inside, the smell hit her first. Blood, oil, and something burnt. She found the old woman on the kitchen floor. Still alive but barely. Her skin was bruised and gray, her breath shallow. Lena knelt beside her. "Señora, can you hear me?" The woman's eyes fluttered open, unfocused. Her lips moved. "Don't call police." "I won't," Lena said softly. "I'm going to get you help, okay?" The old woman's hand tightened weakly around her wrist. "He will come." Lena frowned. "Who?" But before she could answer, headlights swept across the wall. Black SUV pulled up outside. Lena's blood went cold. She stood quickly, motioning for Marisol to hide behind the sofa. Then she grabbed a kitchen knife, the only thing she could find, and waited. The front door opened. A tall man stepped inside, rain dripping from his coat. He looked around the room, his eyes sharp, assessing. When his gaze found Lena, he froze. "Lena." Her grip on the knife faltered. "Santiago." For a moment neither spoke. The years between them stretched thin, full of silence, betrayal, and the kind of history that never really dies. "What are you doing here?" he asked, voice low but not unkind. "I could ask you the same thing." He glanced toward the floor, at the blood, at the old woman struggling to breathe. His jaw tightened. "Who did this?" "Your men," Lena said. "The ones in the black trucks." His head snapped up. "My men don't touch civilians." Then you've lost control of them. Something dark flashed in his eyes. Impossible. Tell that to her. He knelt beside the old woman, checking her pulse. His movements swift and practiced. For a man known for cruelty, there was surprising gentleness in the way he touched her. Almost reverent. She's still alive, he said quietly. We need to move her. Lena hesitated. You're not calling for help. I am the help. He lifted the woman easily, carrying her toward the SUV. Come. Lena didn't move. He turned back, his eyes locking on hers. This wasn't my order. Whoever did this is going to pay. She searched his face, looking for the arrogance, the cold charm, the lie, but all she saw was fury. Controlled, burning, real. So she followed. They drove into town, the rain pounding harder now. The girl sat in the back seat, her small hands gripping the headrest. The old woman lay across the seat, her breathing shallow. Santiago's men met them outside a gated compound on the edge of the city. When they saw the boss carrying a half-dead stranger, their confusion was visible. Find Alvarez, he ordered. Now. Yes, sir. They vanished into the house. Lena stood by the SUV, arms crossed, rain soaking her hair. You expect me to believe this wasn't you? He turned toward her, his expression unreadable. You think I'd send men to beat an old woman and a child? I think you've done worse. His eyes narrowed. Not without reason. That's supposed to make it better. It makes it true. For a moment neither spoke. The rain filled the silence. Finally Santiago said, She's family. Lena blinked. What? The woman, he said. Her name's Rosa Vargas. My mother's sister. Lena's stomach dropped. You're saying she's your aunt? He nodded once. And that means whoever did this wasn't coming for her. They were sending a message to me. From who? His voice went flat. From someone inside my house. Lightning flared across the desert, lighting the compound like a wound. Santiago looked down at the little girl standing in the doorway, rainwater glistening on her cheeks. He crouched so he was eye level with her. Marisol, he said gently. Who hurt your grandmother? The girl hesitated. Then, in a small voice, she said a name that made Lena's blood freeze. Because it wasn't one of his rivals. It was one of his own. Diego, she whispered. He said you sent him. Santiago's expression didn't change. But something behind his eyes did. He stood slowly, his voice calm, quiet, terrifying. Diego Alvarez is my lieutenant. Lena swallowed hard. And your best friend. He nodded once. Was. That night the rain finally stopped. But the storm inside that house was just beginning. Because somewhere in Nogales, the man Santiago trusted most had just declared war. Not against his enemies, but against his own blood. And the only witness left alive was a terrified child who now belonged to both of them. By dawn, Nogales looked like it had been washed clean. But the light always lied here. Beneath the smell of wet asphalt and creosote, something darker still moved. Whispers, debts, the kind of promises that don't need to be spoken out loud. Inside Santiago Vega's compound, the air felt heavy. Men came and went in silence, eyes lowered, avoiding the boss's gaze. Everyone knew something had broken the night before. Something deeper than business, sharper than betrayal. Lena Cruz stood at the window of a guest room overlooking the courtyard, watching the men load crates into trucks. Each movement was fast, mechanical, precise. Santiago's world ran on fear disguised as loyalty. Behind her, the faint sound of a child's breathing broke the silence. Marisol slept curled up in the oversized bed, clutching the red backpack to her chest. Her small body looked fragile against the endless white sheets, but her face, even in sleep, was fierce, haunted. Lena turned away, her hands trembling slightly. She'd promised herself she would never walk into this world again. Not after what happened in Monterrey. Not after what Santiago had done. But here she was in his house, in his reach. And somehow it didn't feel like a mistake. felt inevitable. Downstairs, the walls buzzed with tension. Santiago stood at the long dining table, surrounded by files, photos, and the unmistakable smell of tobacco. He was dressed in black again, sleeves rolled to the elbows, his gun lying casually beside his coffee. When Lena entered, his eyes flicked up briefly. "She's asleep." "Yes." "Good." She hesitated. "You've been up all night." "I don't sleep when family bleeds." The words came quiet, controlled, but his knuckles were white against the table. Lena folded her arms. "You said Diego Alvarez did this." He nodded. "Then why haven't you gone after him?" He looked up sharply. "You think I won't? I think you're waiting. And that scares me more." A faint, humorless smile touched his lips. "You still know me too well. I wish I didn't." He exhaled, pushing a file toward her. "Look." She frowned but opened it. Inside were photographs. Grainy surveillance shots taken at the border crossing. Diego Alvarez, meeting with men she didn't recognize. "These were taken 2 weeks ago," Santiago said. "He's been moving my routes through new channels, off books behind my back. He's not stealing from me, Lena. He's building something." "What kind of something?" He hesitated. "A coup." She looked up sharply. "You're saying he's trying to take your empire?" He nodded once. "And using my own blood to do it." "Your aunt. Her ranch sits on a key smuggling route. She refused to sell." He thought killing her would send a message. Lena's jaw tightened. "He didn't finish the job." "No," Santiago said, voice low. "And now he'll learn what that costs." Later, Lena found herself in the garden, watching Marisol draw in the dirt with a stick. The girl had barely spoken since the night before. "You like it here?" Lena asked softly. Marisol shrugged. "It's big. Scary big." She nodded. "Feels like ghosts live here." Lena smiled sadly. "Maybe they do." Marisol looked up. "Is he a bad man?" The question hit harder than expected. "Who?" Lena asked. "The one with the scar. The one who carried Grandma." Lena hesitated. "Sometimes," she said. "But not always." The child studied her with unnerving calm. "He said bad men don't cry." Lena looked toward the house, where Santiago stood at the window, watching them. "Then maybe he's wrong." That evening, the compound filled with headlights and whispers. Santiago's men gathered in the main hall, a rare assembly that only happened when something was about to break. Lena stood at the edge of the room, heart pounding. Santiago walked in, every step deliberate. He said nothing for a long time. Just stood there, letting silence stretch until it became unbearable. Then finally, "There's a traitor among us." No one moved. "Diego Alvarez has turned," he continued. "He's working with our rivals in Sonora, moving shipments through our routes, selling our names for protection. He put a child in danger and left my blood in the dirt." A ripple of anger moved through the men. Santiago's voice dropped lower, colder. "You will find him. You will bring him to me. Alive." A murmur of assent filled the room. Then he looked at Lena. "You'll come with me." She blinked. "Why?" "Because you were the one who found the girl. And Diego will want to finish what he started." "You're using me as bait," she said flatly. His tone didn't waver. "I'm keeping you close." She stared at him, searching his face for a lie. But there was none. Only that infuriating calm that always hid something dangerous underneath. "Where are we going?" she asked. He reached for his coat. "To find out what my best friend wants more than my life." They left Nogales under cover of darkness, heading south toward the borderlands. The desert stretched endless and silent, the sky bruised purple and gray. For a long time neither spoke. Finally Lena said, "Why was she living there alone?" "Your aunt." Santiago's jaw tightened. "She wanted out. Said she didn't want to watch what I'd become." "And you let her go?" She was the only one I did. Lena looked at him. His profile caught in the flicker of the dashboard lights. You ever think about stopping? Just walking away? He smiled faintly. Every day. And why don't you? He glanced at her. Because people like me don't get to stop. We just run out of enemies before we run out of guilt. She turned toward the window, the reflection of the desert lights catching in her eyes. That's not true. I stopped. He looked at her, voice soft but sharp. No, you didn't. You just pretended. The silence after that felt heavier than gunfire. An hour later, they reached a cluster of abandoned gas pumps near the highway, one of Santiago's old relay stations. The place was empty, silent. Too silent. Lena stepped out first, the air cool against her face. She glanced around. You sure this is the place? Diego used to run this post, Santiago said. If he's moving against me, he'll come back to the roots. And if he doesn't, then he's already inside my house. Lena's stomach twisted. You think one of your own men? He cut her off with a small motion. Don't move. His eyes locked on something in the dirt. A boot print, fresh. He turned toward her, whispering, Get back in the car. But it was too late. A single gunshot cracked through the silence, echoing off the hills. Santiago flinched, grabbing her shoulder, pulling her down behind the car. Sniper, he hissed. Where? Doesn't matter. They're watching the road. She looked at him, breathless. Then what do we do? He checked his gun, eyes narrowing. We changed the story. Before she could ask what he meant, he pressed a small device into her palm, a silver drive, cold against her skin. What is this? Insurance, he said. If I don't make it back, find the girl. Give it to her. Why her? She's not who you think she is. Her heart stopped. What? He met her eyes, and in that moment everything inside her went still. Marisol, he said quietly, is my daughter. The next bullet shattered the back window, and the desert night exploded into war. The world became a blur of dust, gunfire, and desert light. Lena's breath caught as the second bullet tore through the metal beside her. Santiago shoved her flat behind the car, his hand heavy on her shoulder. The smell of gunpowder and hot sand filled the air. Stay down, he barked. But she could see the blood running down his arm, soaking into the fabric of his shirt. You're hit, she said. He ignored her. They'll move closer. 2 shooters at least. Probably Diego's men. How do you know? Because they're not aiming to kill me yet. They're hurting. Her voice trembled. Hurting us where? He looked toward the narrow ravine behind the gas station, a dried riverbed that snaked toward the mountains. There. Then what? Then I stop pretending I'm still human. Before she could answer, he fired twice into the hills, rolled low, and grabbed her hand. Run. They bolted into the ravine as another shot cracked through the night. Gravel bit into Lena's knees when she stumbled, but Santiago yanked her up, half dragging her forward. The echoes of pursuit grew louder, boots on rock, the metallic click of reloaded magazines. They ran until the desert swallowed the sound of the road. Only the wind remained, whispering through the mesquite. Santiago collapsed against a boulder, breathing hard. Blood darkened the sand beside him. Sit, he ordered. I'm fine. He looked up sharply. That wasn't a suggestion. Lena knelt beside him, her heart hammering. Let me see. He tried to wave her off, but his strength faltered. The wound was deep, a clean through and through along his shoulder, close to the bone. She tore a strip from her shirt and pressed it against the bleeding. He winced but said nothing. Tell me about Marisol, she said quietly. His eyes met hers, dark and unreadable. Now's not the time. It's exactly the time, she snapped. You just told me that little girl, the one I pulled out of the rain, is your daughter. You don't get to walk away from that. Santiago leaned his head back against the stone, eyes closing for a moment. Her mother was my sister's child. My blood. When her parents were killed in a raid 6 years ago, I swore I'd protect her. By hiding her. By keeping her away from me, he said. I thought if she didn't carry my name, she'd have a chance at a life that wasn't marked for death. Lena's throat tightened. And now she's in your house. Your enemies know. Yes. So you lied to everyone, even her. I lied to keep her breathing. For a moment neither spoke. The night wind moved across the sand like a sigh. Then Santiago said softly, "You still think I'm the villain?" Lena's hands stilled. "You were my villain once." He smiled faintly. "And now?" She looked at him, at the man bleeding quietly in the desert. The man who'd burned down her life once, and somehow was now the only one standing between her and death. "I don't know what you are," she whispered. "Good," he said. "Neither do I." They reached an abandoned mission by dawn, a crumbling stone church hidden in the folds of the mountains. The morning light bled through the broken roof, striping the floor in gold and shadow. Santiago moved carefully, setting up a small fire in the corner. His wound had stopped bleeding, but his skin was pale. Lena watched him from across the room, her voice quieter now. "What's on the drive you gave me?" He hesitated. "Names. Counts. Well, but one file matters most." "Which one?" He looked at her. Marisol's birth certificate. Her brow furrowed. "Why would that matter?" "Because the name on it isn't mine," he said. "It's Diego's." Lena froze. "What?" Santiago's gaze darkened. "He forged the papers before I could stop him. Legally, he's her father. If anything happens to me, she belongs to him. By law, by blood, by everything that keeps men like us in control." Lena felt her stomach twist. He did it to keep her as leverage. "Yes," Santiago said. "She was the only thing he could use to make me hesitate." She took a step closer. "And that's why he went after your aunt. Because she knew." He nodded. "Rosa helped hide Marisol when she was born. Diego found out last month." Lena's hands curled into fists. "So the beating wasn't about land or money." "No," he said. "It was a warning." By afternoon, the heat rose again, shimmering through the broken walls. Santiago sat against the altar steps, cleaning his gun. Lena paced, restless. "You know he won't stop," she said. "He'll come for her." "I know. And you can't fight him alone." "I've been fighting alone since I was 16. This is different," she said. "You're not protecting your empire now. You're protecting a child." He looked at her, something sharp and tender flickering in his eyes. "She's all I have left of the part of me that wasn't born a monster." The words hit her like a blow. Before she could speak, movement caught her eye. A shadow at the doorway. Santiago was already on his feet, gun raised. "Who's there?" A voice answered, low, mocking, too familiar. "Still alive, viejo. I was starting to think you'd finally done something smart." Lena's blood ran cold. Diego Alvarez stepped into the light. He looked cleaner than he should have. Crisp jacket, polished boots, the easy arrogance of a man who believed the world still bent for him. Two armed men followed close behind. Santiago's gun didn't waver. "You picked the wrong graveyard." Diego smiled. "On the contrary, you led me right to it." His gaze flicked toward Lena. "And you brought her. The famous bartender who thought she could outrun ghosts." Lena's fingers twitched toward her own weapon. "You came for the girl." "Of course," Diego said. "She's the only thing he ever loved." Santiago's voice dropped. "You touch her and I'll." "You'll what?" Diego interrupted. "Kill me." "You've had years to try, hermano." The word froze the air. Lena stared between them. "What did you just call him?" Diego's grin widened. "You didn't tell her." "Of course you didn't." He turned to her, voice almost kind. "We share the same father. Different mothers. Same blood. Same curse." Lena's heart pounded. "You're brothers." Santiago's jaw clenched. "We stopped being that a long time ago." Diego shrugged. You can't erase blood. You can only drown in it. Then he nodded to his men. Bring her. Lena's hand shot for her gun, too slow. One of the men grabbed her, twisting her wrist until the weapon clattered to the floor. Santiago fired once, the man dropped. Chaos exploded. The other guard lunged. Santiago caught him with a brutal strike, but Diego fired, hitting him low in the side. Stop! Lena shouted. But Diego only smiled. Not until he feels what I felt. Santiago staggered, blood blooming dark across his shirt. He aimed again, but Diego was gone, slipping through the sunlight and dust. By the time Lena reached him, Diego's truck was already tearing down the dirt road. He took the drive, she said breathlessly. Santiago coughed, wincing. He won't get far. He has men everywhere. He met her eyes. Not men like you. Her throat tightened. What are you saying? I'm saying you're the only one I trust to finish this. Santiago. He reached for her hand, gripping it weakly. Find her. Protect her. No matter what happens. Tears stung her eyes. You think I'm leaving you here to die? He smiled faintly. I think you're smart enough not to argue with a dying man. She pressed her forehead against his, whispering, You're not dying. He exhaled, soft and trembling. Then go prove it. Lena pulled away, grabbed her gun and ran toward the truck. Behind her, the desert wind rose again, carrying his voice, faint but certain. Lena, tell her the truth. The road ahead was long, hot, and endless. But Lena didn't look back. Because the truth she carried wasn't just about a child or a cartel. It was about blood. And blood, in Santiago Vega's world, always came with a price. The road to Tucson unspooled under a sky the color of gunmetal. Heat wavered off the asphalt even though the sun was sinking, a strip of copper torn along the horizon. Lena kept the needle just shy of reckless and gripped the wheel until her fingers ached. In the passenger seat, the silver of Santiago's blood dried dark against her shirt where she'd pressed him, where he'd said the words that wouldn't stop echoing. Marisol is my daughter. The dash clock ticked toward 7:13 p.m. She had maybe an hour of daylight left. Diego's truck had a head start and men on the payroll in every desert diner from Rio Rico to South Tucson. But he also had a tell. He liked control too much to disappear without proof. He would show his proof. He would make it legal. Lena's phone buzzed. A blocked number. She put it on speaker and kept her eyes on the ribbon of road. Cruz. Diego's voice flowed through the speakers, easy as whiskey. I always said you were wasted pouring drinks. Where is she? Lena said. A short laugh. You mean where are we? Head north. City lights suit custody disputes. Try me again, Lena said, keeping her tone flat. He indulged her. Tucson Juvenile Services. I have a judge waiting, a paper with my name on it, and a frightened child who thinks the world is a set of doors that keep closing. If you get here fast enough, you can watch me open one. He hung up. The sky dimmed. A monsoon wall rose from the south, slate and churning, the desert's breath about to break. Lena pressed harder. The first drops hit the windshield like thrown pebbles as she passed the San Xavier district, the mission's white domes ghostly in the dark. She needed intel, and that meant a voice she hadn't wanted to call in 2 years. She scrolled to Maya R. and pressed. Lena. The voice was sleep-rough, suspicious, but warm underneath. You died. At least that's what I told my fear. Not yet, Lena said. I need you. Where? Driving into Tucson. Diego Alvarez is moving to take temporary guardianship over a minor at Juvenile Services. He has forged documents. Oz. How forged? Birth certificate lists him as father. Silence, then Maya inhaled, a sound of someone shelving shock to make room for action. I can stall the intake. 30 minutes. Maybe 40 if the on-call judge likes my coffee more than the law tonight. You still at the clinic? Lena asked. Free clinic off South 12th. Come after. Don't bleed on my floors. Maya's voice softened. Is this about the man you swore you'd never speak to again? Lena's throat tightened. It's about a little girl. Good, Maya said. That's the one reason I never ask questions. The rain began in earnest. Fat, hot drops that hammered the windshield and drowned the radio's static. Tucson rose ahead, a low scattered glow under bruised clouds. Lena hit I-19 and slid off toward Ajo Way, counting lights, counting breaths. She pulled behind a vacant tire shop across from the county building and killed the engine. The world narrowed to rain, sodium lights, and the thud of her heart. She popped the glove box and pulled the spare pistol Santiago had insisted she take back when he still believed he could plan for every chaos. Her hands didn't shake. She told herself that was skill and not numbness. She crossed the street in the downpour and stepped into the fluorescent chill of the county lobby. The air smelled like bleach and paperwork. A guard looked up, bored, then startled. She forgot what she looked like soaked through. Hair slicked back, eyes shark bright. Juvenile intake, she said. Second floor, he said, then added. You okay, ma'am? Ask me in an hour, she said. The elevator groaned. The second floor hummed with cheap lights and the whisper of feet. At the end of the hall, a pair of glass doors flickered family court. After hours in peeling vinyl. Maya met her there. Hair piled quick under a clip, blue scrubs, a cardigan that had seen too many long nights. She handed Lena a towel that used to be white and a visitor's badge. I stalled the clerk, she murmured. Told her the system is down. Which, in a way, is poetry. Diego? Lena asked. 20 minutes ago. He's in interview 3 with a private attorney and the on-call judge. Maya's mouth flattened. He brought candy. The words made something sour rise in Lena's throat. And Marisol. In the playroom, Maya said. With a social worker who hates cartoons. She asked for you. Lena nodded once and moved down the hall, counting doors until she reached the small square window of the playroom. Inside, a TV blared a grinning llama, the sound too loud. Marisol sat on a plastic chair, backpack clutched, eyes fixed on the door like she could will it to open. Lena knocked softly. The child looked up, and the fear that had become her face cracked. Lena, she breathed. The social worker, blonde bun, tired kindness, looked up too. We're mid-intake. I'm family, Lena lied. It wasn't a lie. The woman hesitated, then saw something in Lena's face that made arguments seem inefficient. 5 minutes, she said gently, and stepped into the hall, leaving the door ajar. Lena crouched. The rain's smell clung to her clothes. Are you hurt? Marisol shook her head, then moved forward fast, hitting Lena's neck with both arms. Lena held her tight, felt the thrum of a hummingbird heart. He said I have a new father, Marisol whispered into Lena's shoulder. People say lots of things when they're afraid of losing, Lena said. Do you trust me? The child pulled back and searched her eyes with the seriousness of a judge. Yes. Then hear me, Lena said. The choice rose in her throat like a taste. Tell her the truth. She heard Santiago on the wind again, the way he'd said it like a benediction and a debt. Your grandmother is safe, Lena began. And you have a father. Not the man who brought you here. Another man. He's complicated. He is trying. The little brow furrowed. Is he bad? He's made bad choices, Lena said. But he loves you more than he knows how to say. Marisol's hands tightened in the backpack straps. Then why didn't he come? He did, Lena said softly. He sent me. Down the hall a door opened. A slab of a man in a charcoal suit stepped out, Diego's private attorney. He saw Lena and stilled. Then he smiled like he'd been given dessert. Miss Cruz, he said, smoothing his tie. I heard you pour a mean whiskey. Shame you're in the wrong building. Where's Diego? Lena asked. In with the judge, he said. Paperwork's exquisite. Fatherhood suits my client. Lena stood slowly. Fatherhood doesn't suit thieves. It's scared. Let's not be religious. Behind him, another door opened and Diego emerged. hair dry despite the storm, a suit that fit like entitlement. He clocked Lena, then the playroom window. The smile he wore for judges slipped into the one he wore for wolves. Perfect timing, he said. Come, Nina. Let's make this official. Marisol's fingers crushed Lena's hand. Lena angled her body and made herself a gate. She's not going anywhere with you, Lena said. Diego straightened his cuffs, bored. You don't decide. He turned to the social worker, who'd reappeared with a clipboard. Ma'am, I have an order. Maya slid in then, a file in her hand and steel in her spine. And I have a medical hold. The child has a suspected concussion. The social worker blinked. She does. She was present during an assault, Maya said evenly. Symptoms delayed in minors. We need observation. Diego's eyebrow lifted, amused. Doctor. Physician's assistant, Maya corrected. With an attending willing to sign in 5 minutes. He spread his hands. And yet, the judge outranks your stethoscope. A new voice cut the air. Not if I suspend the interim order pending review. A woman in a rain-dark blazer approached. Mid-40s, hair slicked from the storm, eyes that missed nothing. The badge at her belt said Pima County Attorney. Counsel, she nodded at Diego's attorney. Mr. Alvarez. I hate storms. I hate paperwork. Mostly, I hate men who think children are leverage. Counselor, Diego purred. You woke up on the wrong side of jurisdiction. On the contrary, she said, taking the clipboard from the social worker and signing something with a brisk flourish. You triggered mine. Lena didn't exhale. She'd learned not to trust rescue. But she recognized triage when she saw it. Time bought, not salvation. Diego's gaze returned to Lena. For a moment, the room evaporated and it was just the two of them. The smell of rain and bleach and something old as hunger. You can slow me, he said softly. You can't stop me. I am his blood. Lena chose then. Not the easy choice, the one that tasted like running. The one that hurt. She turned to the child. Marisol, listen. The little chin lifted. The man who brought you here says he's your father, Lena said, voice low, steady. He is not. He did something cruel to make paper say what blood does not. The man who is your father, he is not safe. But he is trying to be brave for you. And I will take you to him if you say yes. Diego's smile went knife-sharp. Kidnapping Ms. Cruz. In front of an officer of the court. Bold. The county attorney's eyes flicked, calculating. Maya's hand found Lena's sleeve, a silent think. The social worker's mouth parted like a word had forgotten its own shape. Marisol looked at Diego the way children look at weather. Measuring which way to run. Then she turned back to Lena and nodded once. Small and absolute. Okay, she said. The lights flickered. The storm hit full. In that blink of dark, motion broke like glass. Diego lunged. The attorney shouted. Maya's elbow found a gut that deserved it. Lena scooped the child and moved. Down the hall, right the stairs instead of the elevator, boots slapping wet steps. The fire door screamed. Night punched her in the face, wet and warm and loud. She didn't think about law. She thought about speed. Across the lot, over a puddle deep enough to swallow ankles, the sedan's door a miracle that opened. She strapped the child in with hands that had stitched men, pushed start, and prayed the engine honored promises. Did. Headlights carved the deluge. A shape broke from the doors. Diego, coat discarded, running like a man who had never been denied. He reached the curb as Lena hit the exit. Metal screamed. His palm on the hood, a slap of claim, and then vanished in water. Lena, Marisol whispered, too calm to be calm. I'm not afraid of him when you drive. Good, Lena said. Hold tight. They cut east, then south, then west, slicing a pattern across the grid that made no sense except to someone mapping cameras and habits. Diego would expect the freeway. He would not expect the old roads. She took Mission Road, then a narrow cut through scrub and flood channel, the rain howling on the roof. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown. She answered. Don't go home, Santiago's voice came, thin, ragged, alive. A tremor threaded the words the way pain threads men who pretend it doesn't. He has eyes there. You're alive, she said. The two words an exhale she hadn't realized she was saving. Not for long if you keep that route, he said. He'll funnel you toward Ajo Way. Go west to 3 points. Switch cars. My man Hector. Old feed store, red door. You can barely stand, Lena said. Tell me you're not driving. Was. She heard tires on gravel, a breath that sounded like it hurt. I'm not. Yet. What happens when he follows? She asked. The answer came without hesitation. We stop running. The line clicked dead. They hit Valencia and then Ajo, the city loosening into desert again. The storm wore itself out in sheets. The sky opened in bruised patches where stars peered through like nosy neighbors. Marisol had her forehead pressed to the glass, following the river the water made beside the road. Do you like your name? Lena asked because the silence had grown teeth. The child nodded. Grandma says it means sea. She says my real name means lightning. What's your real name? Marisol looked at her. Rain made her eyes look larger, older. He said when we're safe I can say it. He said names can be doors or bullets. He paused. I think mine is both. Lena's throat caught. Mine too. They reached the feed store. Rusted tin, one red door winking under a single bulb. The rain spit once more and gave up. Night settled. Lena killed the lights, the engine, the part of her that had once believed life could be quiet. Hector, she called softly. The door cracked. A wedge of light, a dark beard, eyes like the bottom of wells. He looked at the child first, then at Lena, and stepped aside. Quick, he said. And quiet. Inside, the air smelled like molasses and oil. Tarp-covered shapes hummed shadow. Somewhere a radio whispered ranchera under breath. Hector handed Lena keys. A weathered fob with a copper saint. Truck out back, he said. Plates cold. Fuel full. This 1 inch, he nodded to Marisol. Rides in the middle. Got a booster. Laws are laws even when the world forgets them. Lena almost smiled. Bless you. He grunted like blessing was heavy. Boss coming. He said so, Lena said, and the space behind the word said if he can. A low engine ghosted up the road. Hector moved without moving. Lights cut, door closed, breath held. Headlights washed the lot pale and then went dark. Knock. 3 beats. Long, short, long. Hector opened. Santiago stepped in. He looked like rain had argued with him and he'd won on points. Pale yes. Wound rewrapped one-handed, shirt darker on one side, jaw set. But his eyes were clear, focused in a way that made everything else in the room select a side. Marisol saw him and forgot that children learn caution from hard nights. Ran. He caught her with a sound that broke something in Lena she hadn't known was still stiff. He knelt, closed his eyes in her hair, and breathed like it counted. Mi Rayo, he whispered. My lightning. Are you mad at me? She asked into his shoulder. He pulled back and cupped her face. Thumb soft where the world had been hard. At the storm, he said. Never at you. Hector cleared his throat. We should move. Santiago stood, his gaze finding Lena's. There was gratitude in it, but also a question that had borne itself in fire. Are we doing this together or alone? She answered without words. She held up the copper saint's keys. I don't do halfway. He nodded once, and the relief that crossed his face was not something a man like him let many people see. They moved. Out the back, past bales and shadows, into the yard where the truck waited under dust and possibility. Hector climbed in first and flipped a hidden switch that made the taillights wink in a way that meant friend to the kind of men who knew this night. Marisol scrambled into the middle seat. Santiago slid in on her side. Hand still on her shoulder like proof. Lena took the wheel. The engine turned and purred. They pulled out onto the dirt road. Behind them the feed store's bulb went dark. Ahead the desert stretched, starlit and listening. Where? Lena asked. Santiago stared at the line where the land kissed sky. Sasabe crossing, he said. Then Arivica. He has people in Green Valley. He won't expect the back. You think like a ghost, Lena said. He almost smiled. I learned from the best. They rode with the windows cracked, letting in desert night, creosote and wet dust, the last breath of rain. Marisol leaned her head against Lena's arm and stayed awake with the stubbornness of the hunted. Tell me a story, she demanded softly. Not a scary one. Santiago's voice came low. Once there was a girl named for the light that breaks a storm. Her mother wrapped her in a red blanket when she was born and told her the world would try to steal her name. But the girl learned to run faster than thieves. And then? Marisol asked. And then she found a woman who drove like the road was a promise, he said, looking at Lena now. And a man who was trying to be better than his worst day. And they decided to make the world keep its hands off her. Marisol's lashes lowered. That's not a story, she whispered. That's a plan. Smart girl, Lena said. Lightning, Santiago said. They hit Arivica Road just as a line of headlights materialized in the rearview. 3. Then 4. Whoa. Rest. Company, Lena said. Santiago's jaw tightened. Diego. The first set of lights surged. A truck drew up on their left, too close. A man leaned out and made a throat-cut sign, old as bravado. Lena swung right, tires biting gravel, corrected, found purchase, found anger. Seatbelt, she said and gunned it. The desert leaped. Wind turned to a howl. Another truck slid in behind, too hungry. The road narrowed, the night narrowed. The world narrowed to a white line she refused to let go. Hold on, she said, and cut hard onto a ranch track that hadn't been a road in 20 years. The chase stuttered. Diego's drivers reacted a half-second too slow. That was all speed needs to change sides. One truck fishtailed, corrected, and clipped a mesquite that didn't care about paperwork. The other found the rut Lena had avoided and let its back end decide it for a while. Straight, Santiago said. Then left at the windmill. I see it, Lena said. The windmill rose out of dark, a skeleton that had seen better weather. She took the left and killed the lights. Behind them, the world overshot, headlights carving their old future into scrub. Silence came down like a curtain. They coasted into shadow and let the engine idle low. In the pause, the desert spoke again. The tick of cooling metal, the call of something nocturnal that had never heard of men. Far off, a frustrated engine revved like a curse. Then nothing. Marisol let out a breath she must have been holding since the playroom TV. We won. Tonight, Lena said. We won tonight. Santiago looked at her in the dim. There was pride there. And fear. And something that made Lena want to sleep for a week and wake in a world that didn't know their names. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a thin envelope, waterproofed, wrinkled, stubborn. He handed it to Lena. What's this? She asked. The other insurance, he said. You asked me once why I don't stop. I never had anywhere to stop to. Now I do. But stopping has a price. She opened it. Inside, 2 passports, crisp and clean, names she could wear without choking. And a folded photo. A woman she didn't know, holding a baby wrapped in a red blanket. The woman's eyes were Lena's, kind of tired. Earned, not given. On the back, in Santiago's hand. Doors or bullets? Choose. A sweep of light washed the cab. A lone truck idled on the ridge. Not Diego. This one smaller, older, a farmer stubborn. A figure stepped out and lifted a hand, palm open. Friend. Hector's second car. Santiago exhaled. We move again at first light. Lena nodded. And then? He looked at his daughter. He looked at the night. Then we make a choice. What choice? Marisol asked, half asleep but greedy for endings. Santiago's voice was soft. Whether to run farther than our ghosts. Or to turn and teach them to be afraid of us. Lena met his eyes. The engine purred like a cat that had decided to tolerate fools. The stars were knives. The air smelled like a prayer that had learned to fight. "Tomorrow," she said, and put the truck in gear. Behind them in the city, papers waited with names written wrong. Ahead, the land opened and the road broke into choices. The storm had passed. The flood it left behind would rearrange everything. And in the thin seam between night and morning, with a child pressed warm at her side and a man bleeding quietly on the other, Lena knew the truth of their world. Redemption wasn't a place you arrived. It was a direction you drove, headlights cutting a narrow path, hearts deciding every mile who they were going to be. They headed for the dark and what lay beyond it. The windmill spun once, twice, and stilled, listening. Far to the south, a phone lit in a glove box and a message crawled onto a cracked screen. Sent, unsent, delivered, fated. Diego, change of plan. Bring the judge. Bring the girl's name. Tomorrow we end this in daylight. The desert nodded, ancient and unimpressed. Morning waited with its teeth out. And the choice sharpened into something that could save them or break them. Either way, the world would learn how lightning writes its own sky. Dawn seeped into the desert like a slow confession. The storm had rinsed the night clean. What it left behind smelled of wet creosote and metal, like the air had been sharpened. The feed store's tin roof ticked in the quiet as it cooled. Beyond the fence line, the mesquite shook the last pearls of rain from their spines. Lena didn't sleep. She sat on the back bumper of the truck with a paper cup of coffee cooling in her hands and watched the sky go from charcoal to the color of old bone. Inside the cab, Marisol slept in a jacket 2 sizes too big, the red backpack under her cheek like a pillow she refused to trade. Every so often, the girl's mouth moved with dream words no one could hear. Footsteps scuffed the dirt. Santiago eased down beside Lena, moving like Pain had been taught to walk. His shirt was clean and poorly buttoned. The fresh wrap on his shoulder bled through at one corner, a small tide pressing against gauze. "You're supposed to be resting," Lena said. He looked at the pale horizon and smiled without teeth. "I've been resting my whole life. It never helped." They sat a while, the way people do when their next words will cost them. "Diego wants a daylight ending," Lena said. "He'll bring a judge who owes him, a story that flatters him, and men who think paperwork is armor. Then we tell a different story," Santiago said quietly. "In a room where paper still means something." Lena studied his profile. The bruise shadow along his jaw, the place where stubble hid a scar. "You think the law is going to save us?" "I think," he said, voice softening, "that I've spent years teaching the law to fear me. Maybe today I let it teach me back." She turned the cup between her palms. "He forged her birth certificate." "I know." A long breath. "Rosa warned me he was moving pieces. I didn't listen." He glanced toward the truck. "He thought if he owned her name, he owned me." "He doesn't," Lena said. "No," he agreed. "But I've lived long enough to know that for a child, the name on paper can be a door that never opens." He reached into his coat and slid an envelope across the bumper. It was thick and stiff, edges battered, the flap sealed with a strip of clear tape. "What's this?" Lena asked. "The only leverage I have that doesn't bleed," he said. "Wire transfers, shell companies, routes, names with badges that don't deserve them. Enough to pull my house down without landing the roof on a child." He paused. "The county attorney, the one from last night. Navarro. She'll know what to do with it." "You trust her." "I trust the way she looked at Marisol," he said. "Like a future, not a file." "And what about us?" Lena asked before she could sand the question down. "When the papers settle. When the room is empty." He didn't look at her, and that told her more than if he had. "I turn myself in," he said. "There's a price that needs paying. I can't make the world believe I'm new. I can only decide what I do with what's left of me." Her chest tightened in a way that felt both foolish and necessary. "That's not the only way. It's the only way that lets her sleep without listening for engines," he said. His mouth quirked. "It's the only way that lets you breathe without scanning for shadows in your rearview." Don't pretend you're doing me a favor, she said too quickly and then softer. Even if you are. His hand opened on the bumper between them. He didn't reach for her. He didn't need to. The air between their fingers hummed like a drawn wire. I've lied to you, he said, eyes on the pale morning. I lied because I thought I could carry it alone and call it protection. But you taught me that protection without truth is just a prettier cage. You didn't need me to teach you that, Lena said. You just needed someone to say it out loud. He nodded once. Then say this. We walk into that courthouse and we don't make threats. We make choices. The truck's door creaked. Marisol blinked at them from the cab, hair wild, backpack strap tangled around her wrist. She slid out. Boots hit dirt with the small finality of a child deciding to stand. Is it morning? She asked. It is, Lena said. Is the bad man gone? No, Santiago said. But he's running out of places to hide. Marisol stepped between them and took one of each of their hands. Her fingers were cold and fierce. Good, she said. They drove as the sun lifted itself over the low mountains. The desert looked new. Small puddles collecting sky in their shallow bowls, the roadside wildflowers darker for a few hours before the heat blanched everything again. They passed a border patrol truck parked like a dare at the shoulder. The agent inside watched them with the patient suspicion of men whose job is to look for stories on faces. In Tucson the road steamed. Palm fronds shivered in post-storm light. They parked 2 blocks from the courthouse they'd flown through in rain the night before and walked the rest of the way. The 3 of them, a small procession threaded through a world pretending nothing had happened. Navarro met them on the steps, blazer still damp, hair tied back hard enough to make a statement. She took in the child at a glance, then Santiago's shoulder, then the envelope in Lena's hand. You brought me something heavy, she said. It belongs to you now, Santiago answered. She slid the envelope into her case and looked him in the eye. You understand what this is. A confession, he said, and didn't blink. And a request. For what? For her to be protected, he said, tipping his head toward Marisol. From him. From me. From the kind of men who think a name is a leash. Navarro's mouth softened. We'll do it by the book. Today? Lena asked. Diego's moving. Today, Navarro said. Judge Patel took my call. He's not on anyone's payroll but his conscience. Maya waited in the hallway outside the courtroom, a stack of charts tucked under her arm and that mix of exhaustion and defiance all good clinic people wear like armor. When she saw Marisol, she crouched to eye level, smiled like a secret, and handed her a small tin of mints. For when things taste bad, she said. Inside, the courtroom was a box that had seen too many families learn new shapes. Pale wood. A clock that ticked like a quiet scold. Desert light angled through high windows and cut the dust into thin gold sheets. Judge Patel took the bench with the calm of men who have heard every tone a plea can take. He was early 50s, brown skin, wireframe glasses, eyes kind in a way that did not guarantee mercy. The clerk read case numbers that might as well have been the weather. Then it was them. Navarro, the judge said. Your Honor, the county attorney rose. We have an emergency petition regarding temporary guardianship and allegations of fraud in a birth record. There is also credible evidence of imminent harm from a claimant, Mr. Diego Alvarez. Diego stood at the opposite table in a fresh suit, hair whispered into perfection, jaw shaved to forget the night. He smiled at the judge the way men smile at mirrors. Your Honor, he purred, I'm here only to ensure my daughter's safety from a dangerous element. I have the paperwork to prove paternity. Patel held out a hand. We'll see the paperwork. Navarro didn't look at Diego. She handed the bailiff 2 folders, one with a forged birth certificate, another with a clinic record bearing the tiny perfect footprint of a newborn and a mother's name that wasn't a secret any longer. Your Honor, she said, the certificate in Mr. Alvarez's possession is a forgery. The clinic's original record shows a different paternal field and bears hospital seals and a timestamp matching the mother's admission. The notary on Mr. Alvarez's version is currently under investigation. Navarro's voice stayed even as she added, "We also have testimony that the child's grandmother was assaulted during an attempt to coerce a signature." Patel turned a page, then another. He had the patience of rain. When he looked up, his eyes were not kind. "Mr. Alvarez." Diego's lawyer rose. "We dispute the chain of custody on those medical records, Anne." "Sit down," Patel said without heat, and the man did, which told Lena more about the judge than any biography would. "Where is the mother?" the judge asked. "Deceased, Your Honor," Navarro replied. 6 years. "And the grandmother?" "In hospital," Navarro said. "Stable. Ready to testify by phone." Patel nodded, then looked toward the back. "Who are you?" he asked the man sitting quietly in the last row, as if trying to be the only person in the room nobody knew. Santiago stood. The room tilted with him. Lena felt it like a change in pressure. He removed his hat out of a habit he'd outlived and took one step forward. "My name is Santiago Vega," he said. "And everything you've heard about me is probably true." A murmur moved like a wind through the gallery. The bailiff stiffened. Maya's hand found Lena's sleeve. Marisol's fingers sought the fabric of Lena's jacket and did not let go. Patel's face didn't change. "Mr. Vega, are you here to claim custody?" "No, Your Honor," he said, and the words were a wire he walked without looking down. "I'm here to tell you I'm the child's father by blood and not by paper, and to ask that the court place her in the temporary guardianship of the woman who brought her out of the rain. Silence, the good kind, the kind that notices when a choice is made." "Why her?" the judge asked. Santiago looked at Lena as if he could will the court to see what he saw. "Because she tells the truth even when it would be easier to run. Because she doesn't owe me anything and still kept my daughter breathing. Because," he swallowed, the small sound cut Lena's chest. "Because I want my child to learn that love and safety can live in the same house." Diego laughed, quick, brittle. "Your Honor, this is theater. Mr. Vega thinks redemption is a costume he can put on for an afternoon." Patel regarded him. "Mr. Alvarez, do you have anything to say regarding the allegations of forgery and assault besides calling people names?" Diego's smile cracked a little. "I have an order signed last night." "That order is suspended pending this hearing," Patel said. "Sit down." Navarro called Rosa by speaker. The old woman's voice came thin but unbroken through the small grid of the phone. She named Diego without prompting, described the night, the fists, the words. When she said "mi nieta," her voice cracked into a sound that made the court reporter look up and swallow. Maya testified to intake records and the chain of signatures. The social worker, neat hair now a little looser, spoke about a child clenching a backpack like it could keep the world out. Lena took the stand and told the truth like a map. The bar, the knock, the kitchen floor, the SUV's headlights drawing a blade of light across blood. The way the child had said no police like it was a rule and not a fear. The way the desert teaches you to listen for the engine before you hear it. When she stepped down, her knees trembled. She didn't mind. Bodies tell their own truths. Patel set his pen down and looked at Diego last. "I'm issuing a temporary order," he said. "Mr. Alvarez, you are enjoined from contact with the child. The birth certificate you presented is presumptively fraudulent. We will refer it to the appropriate authorities. We will order DNA testing to establish paternity. Pending completion, guardianship will be granted to." He looked to Lena, and in that second she felt the floor tilt and steady. "Miss Cruz." Lena didn't breathe. Then she did, so hard it hurt. Patel turned to Santiago. "Mr. Vega, you understand that any claim you might have in this court will be examined in a larger context. If you wish to surrender yourself to authorities, arrangements can be made to ensure your safety." Santiago bowed his head, a small old gesture. "I understand." "Good," Patel said. "Because whatever else you are, you walked your child into a courtroom instead of a gunfight. That counts." The gavel's soft rap didn't sound like victory. Sounded like the start of a long climb. Outside, the sun was high and mean. Heat bounced off the granite steps like a dare. Cameras would come later. For now, the street was only cars and the smell of tortillas rolling out of a place that had been open since before the city had this many names. Navarro took the envelope from her case and passed it to two men who wore the suits of those who never needed to say their agency. They nodded once at Santiago, not with respect, but with the neutrality of function. "Make the calls," Navarro said to them. Then to Lena, "Paperwork this afternoon. Protection orders keyed to Mr. Alvarez's name. If he sneezes in your direction, I want to hear about it." Maya hugged the child and then Lena, quick and fierce, like people do when they know the next time is a luxury, not a promise. "Come by the clinic," she said. "I'll teach you how to re-wrap a shoulder and how to breathe through bad nights." "We'll come," Lena said. Hector waited on the curb, leaning against a car that wanted to be invisible. He watched the street like a man who'd learned to trust silence only in rooms where he could see all four corners. When he saw them, he touched two fingers to his temple, old-fashioned, respectful. "Rosa?" Lena asked Navarro. "In a private room," Navarro said. She heard the order. She cried. Then she asked for Caldo. "That's a prognosis I believe in." They crossed the street to the thin shade of a Palo Verde tree, the three of them, and Lena crouched so she was small like the girl. "You heard the judge," she said. Marisol nodded solemnly, then smiled, a shy flash that changed her whole face. "Does that mean we're a little family?" Lena's throat burned. "It means I'm in charge of snacks and bedtime and teaching you how to roll your R's." "What about him?" the child asked, looking up at Santiago, whose face had become a lesson in how to stand and not break. "He has a different path," Lena said. "One that still leads back to us. Promise." Marisol pressed, as if the word itself could make the road hold. Santiago knelt, the movement careful but certain, and took the child's hands in both of his. His voice was low enough that it felt like a secret whispered into her bones. "Lightning," he said, using the name he'd kept safe in his mouth. "I promise you two things. First, I will do the hard thing so the hard thing doesn't come for you. Second, I will never let anyone write your name for you again." She nodded once, the way she did everything, small and absolute. Then she dug into her backpack and pulled out a marker and a postcard she'd been hoarding, the mission on it, white against two blue sky. "Write it," she said. "My real name." He hesitated. "You should write it yourself." "I want to see how you spell it," she said. Then softer. "So I can copy it right." He smiled, equal parts pain and pride, and wrote carefully, his hand steady even when his breath wasn't. "Reina Luz." Lena blinked, and the letters blurred, and when they cleared she smiled because light had been inside the child the whole time, just waiting for a pen that wasn't borrowed. A black sedan pulled to the curb. Navarro stood by the open door. "It's time," she said. Santiago stood. He didn't look like a lord on a step. He looked like a man who had decided which way his feet would go and what they would mean. He turned to Lena, and the sun made his eyes two different shades of gray she'd never noticed before. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For not letting me make you into a story," he said. Then, after a heartbeat, "For choosing the door." She reached up and set a hand against his jaw where the scar hid like a thin memory. She kissed him once, not the way movies teach you to kiss men like him, but the way people kiss when they're building a bridge and not burning one. His breath shuddered. His hand caught her wrist, held, then let go. He walked to the car. At the door, he turned back to Reina and set a chain in her palm, a small coin threaded through it, worn smooth by years. "For storms," he said. "To remind you you're the one naming them now." He got in. Navarro followed. The door thumped shut. The sedan pulled into traffic and became just another car moving north under a sky blue enough to doubt. Lena stood with Reina in the sun until the heat insisted they move. They did. Down the block to the tortilleria that had been a constant longer than most promises. They sat on bright plastic chairs and ate fresh tortillas dripping butter and honey until the world seemed capable of sweetness again. On the table the postcard dried. Reina Luz stared up from it in Santiago's careful hand, and below it, In a smaller script Lena recognized as her own without remembering writing it. Cruise. Felt right where it landed. Afternoon slid toward evening. Paperwork hummed in the same building where so many lives got refiled. Somewhere across town, a doctor checked a chart and declared a grandmother's pulse steady enough to argue. Maya texted a photo of a tangled stack of clinic bandages and wrote, "Bring snacks or I graft you to supply duty." Hector leaned against a car and watched the world and pretended he wasn't watching them too. And in a quiet office, Navarro slid an envelope labeled Vega Declaration into a safe and dialed a number that would start a string of collapses no headline would ever get right. At sunset, Lena drove Reyna up to Gates Pass. The city unfurled below like a patient machine, lights pricking on one by one as if someone had remembered the switch. The wind came cool off the rocks. A family took photos near the wall, laughter in both languages. A bicyclist in neon cursed the grade and then forgave it. Reyna leaned into Lena's side. "Do you think he'll write?" "I think he'll draw storms and pretend they're mountains," Lena said. The child's head tipped up. "Do you think I'll forget his face?" "No," Lena said. "Because I won't let you." They watched the sky take itself apart with color. Violet where the heat had been. A thin rind of orange at the edge. The first star punched through like a nail. "Is this our new world?" Reyna asked. "It's a start," Lena said. Below them, two ambulances cut through traffic with a slow, steady dignity. Somewhere, a man who had ruled fear for too long learned the weight of choosing to be good when no one was clapping. It wasn't absolution. It was direction. Lena wrapped an arm around the child who had been named for water and would walk like light. Her own heart, stitched by too many nights, hard where it needed to be, soft where it insisted, settled into a rhythm that matched the city's. "I'm going to teach you to drive one day," she said. "On a road no map knows yet." Reyna smiled into the wind. "Fast." "Fast enough," Lena said. "But never past the turn you mean to take." They stayed until the dark had its say. On the way back down, Lena's phone buzzed once. An unknown number, a message with no words. Only a photo. An empty room with a single barred window and a rectangle of moonlight on concrete. On the floor, a postcard half finished in pencil. A storm cloud with a little girl's name written below it, careful and proud. Lena didn't reply. She didn't need to. Some stories say themselves when the weather changes. At a red light, Reyna reached over and slid her small hand into Lena's, palm warm, trust heavier than paper, lighter than air. "Tell me again," she said, voice thick with sleep. "The one about the woman who drove like the road was a promise." Lena squeezed her hand. The light went green. The city opened. The night smelled faintly of rain again, as if the desert were practicing. "Once," she began, and the truck moved forward into a future they would write together, 1 mile at a time, with names no one else got to choose.